What if I told you the trash in your home could become the heart of a magical autumn garden? In today's video, we're not just recycling, we're reimagining. From broken bottles to old jugs, everything can be reborn into something whimsical, enchanting, and unforgettable. Welcome to ModHaus DIY, where creativity meets sustainability. This is Magical Trash to Treasure Fairy Pumpkin Garden Autumn Upcycling Ideas You've Never Seen. This video includes timestamps so you can skip to the ideas you love most. If you have questions, drop them in the comments, I'll be here to chat with you. And if any of these creations spark your imagination, try them out, make them your own, and share your journey. Maybe to you, I'm just another face on a screen. But behind this content, there's a real story, and a real family. This isn't just a video. It's a piece of my heart. Every like, every comment, every subscribe, it truly matters. When you hit that subscribe button, you're not just helping a creator grow. You're helping a dream stay alive. Thank you for being here. Thank you for seeing me. Asterisk. When autumn rolls in, the garden shifts its voice. Leaves turn golden, the air becomes sharp with wood smoke, and suddenly even the simplest shapes whisper of magic. That is how the pumpkin fairy houses first found their place, born not from real gourds, but from humble plastic bottles, discarded and forgotten. With a touch of imagination, they were reshaped into whimsical homes where fairy tales might pause to rest. Imagine a line of them along a garden border, bottle shells trimmed and painted into plump little pumpkins, their curves glowing in shades of amber and tangerine. Small windows cut neatly on the sides glow with the soft promise of candlelight. Doors shaped like arched hobbit entrances open onto a world of curiosity. Moss creeps up their roofs, tiny twigs become chimneys, and dried autumn leaves drape like curtains over their frames. From a distance, you could almost swear that little folk had claimed them for shelter before winter arrives. Placed beneath marigolds or hidden at the roots of a cabbage patch, they blur the line between reality and myth. Children point and gasp, was that a flicker of movement inside the window? Adults pause too, unexpectedly softened, reminded of the stories they once believed. The fairy houses make no grand promise. They don't transform the world. But in their smallness, they open a doorway, showing that even trash can wear a costume of wonder when the season turns. Every garden has a forgotten corner, a dull edge waiting for surprise. Autumn, with its dusky skies and falling leaves, gives the perfect backdrop for these pumpkin houses. They settle into the season as naturally as lanterns at a harvest festival. The air might be cooler, but these glowing creations bring warmth, the kind that sparks in the heart, not just the hands. One could call it upcycling, recycling, sustainability, but perhaps it is simpler than that. It is the art of giving things a second chance, dressed in fairy magic. And in that act, the garden itself becomes a storybook, its pages written in bottle pumpkins and golden leaves. sometimes beauty is hidden in what has already broken. A chipped handle, a hairline crack, a teapot that once poured countless cups of warmth now sits abandoned. Yet in the hush of autumn evenings, these broken vessels take on a new life, glowing softly as enchanted lanterns. Each teapot, no matter how fractured, becomes a vessel of light. Imagine a porcelain pot with its spout cracked but still proud, now holding a candle or fairy bulb inside. Through the lines of its imperfections, light spills out in tiny constellations, as though the stars themselves were caught and stored there. Along a garden path, they shine like beacons guiding wandering fairies home. Placed beneath marigolds or at the base of a pergola, the lanterns cast a gentle shimmer over fallen leaves. Their glow is not harsh but tender, painting the garden with golden strokes. On cool autumn nights, the sight warms visitors like a hearth, even outdoors. Children laugh, enchanted by the idea that fairies use them as night lamps. Adults pause longer than they mean to, surprised by how something broken could shine so softly. The season of autumn has always carried the theme of transformation. Leaves fall, the world prepares for rest, yet here brokenness becomes radiance. Instead of being thrown away, the teapot finds itself honored, not as it once was, but as something new, something magical. It is more than recycling, more than upcycling. It is an act of storytelling with objects. Imagine a cluster of them by your garden gate, a cracked blue teapot glowing beside a rusty watering can, a delicate porcelain one perched on a stone ledge. Each carries its own history, yet together they weave a tapestry of light and memory. In their glow, the garden feels alive with secrets, perhaps Harry Potter's world bleeding into ours, perhaps hobbits whispering under the leaves, perhaps simply the reminder that wonder is closer than we think. And when night deepens, these lanterns glow like guardians, keeping the garden company until dawn. They are no longer forgotten trash. They are lights of imagination, humble, whimsical, eternal in the way they turn brokenness into beauty. There is something irresistible about a bridge. It is not merely an object, but a promise. A way across, a path to the unknown. In the hush of autumn, when the air is crisp and leaves crunch underfoot, even the smallest bridge can feel like a portal into wonder. And so, with a handful of forgotten forks and spoons, the fairy bridge takes shape. The cutlery that once served dinners and stirred soups now bends into graceful arches. Forks curve like railings, their prongs rising into delicate patterns. Spoons, polished by years of use, line up as stepping stones across the tiny structure. Together they become a passage not for us, but for the unseen guests of the garden, the fairies, the hobbits, the whispers of story that always seem closer in autumn twilight. Set over a patch of moss or spanning a shallow trickle of water, the bridge glimmers when the lantern light strikes. Imagine it after rain, droplets clinging to silver edges like jewels. Or in the evening, wrapped with a strand of fairy lights, glowing gently as if stars had landed to guide the way. Children crouch down low to peek across, certain they'll see something small scurrying over. Adults smile quietly, remembering tales they'd long tucked away. What makes it magical is not just its appearance, but its spirit. Trash cutlery that might have been tossed aside is reborn as something playful and curious. It does not boast of grandeur, it whispers. It invites. And in doing so, it shifts the entire mood of the garden, reminding us that imagination has no waste, only beginnings. On an autumn evening, with the smell of damp earth and wood smoke in the air, the fairy bridge feels perfectly at home. It ties the garden together not just physically, but emotionally, linking our world with the one we imagine. Perhaps a hedgehog might wander across. Perhaps a lantern-carrying sprite. Or perhaps it is only us, bending close, letting the childlike part of our hearts cross over into wonder once again. And when the frost comes, and leaves pile high around its base, the bridge remains, still waiting, still shining faintly, still telling its story, that even a fork or a spoon can become a path to magic. There is a hush in the garden when twilight falls, as if the earth itself is drawing a breath. In that silence, certain shapes stir the imagination, shapes like a hollow, round doorway cut into the earth. And so, from something as humble and overlooked as an old tire, a hobbit hollow tunnel comes alive. Discarded tires, their rubber worn and cracked, are rarely thought of with tenderness. Yet, when stacked and arched, covered with moss and soil, they transform into a passageway that looks as though it belongs in the Shire itself. A child kneels, peers into the round space, and wonders if tiny folk might step out any moment. Adults pause too, their hearts caught between laughter and nostalgia, remembering stories of hobbits and wizards read by firelight. The magic of the tunnel lies in its invitation. It doesn't promise where it leads, but it suggests, perhaps into another garden corner, perhaps into another world. Leaves tumble gently across its frame, and ivy drapes lazily down the arch. At dusk, lanterns flicker at its base, turning the entrance into a glowing secret. Suddenly, the garden is no longer ordinary, it is a map of possibility. What makes it special is not only the transformation of trash but the way it reshapes the space around it. The worn tire, destined for neglect, becomes a door to imagination. It blurs the border between waste and wonder, proving that magic often waits in the most unlikely places. In autumn especially, the Hobbit tunnel feels at home. The air carries the scent of damp earth, the leaves are painted in russet and gold, and the tunnel nestles among them like it has always belonged. Each curve of rubber echoes the roundness of Hobbit architecture, unpolished yet warm, playful yet grounded. For children, it becomes a portal to crawl through, a stage for stories, a hideout for secret games. For adults, it is a whimsical landmark, one that lifts the spirit, urging them to believe once more in things unseen. And for the garden itself, it is a heartbeat of imagination, a reminder that no corner need stay dull when touched by creativity. So the tire tunnel waits, its doorway open, its silence humming with possibility. Perhaps tonight, perhaps tomorrow, someone will step through, and for a moment, the garden will be more than a garden. It will be Middle-earth, autumn-cloaked and ageless. There are objects that hold echoes of the past, scratched CDs, forgotten in drawers, carrying songs no one listens to anymore. Their surfaces may be cracked, their usefulness gone, but when autumn dusk falls, they find a new voice as crystal-light orbs. Imagine a sphere crafted from broken fragments of those shiny discs. By day, the orb catches sunlight, scattering rainbows across the soil and leaves like confetti from another world. By night, a small bulb inside makes each shard glow, as though the stars themselves were trapped within a glass globe. In autumn, with long evenings and drifting leaves, the effect is nothing short of magical. Placed among marigolds or nestled at the base of a tree, the orb feels alive, humming softly with hidden energy. Children chase the flickers of color across the ground, while adults pause, surprised at how something once considered junk can transform into an object of such wonder. It is no longer a CD, no longer a relic of forgotten playlists, it is a prism of light, reborn into the season's enchantment. There is poetry in the way the orb shifts its mood with the weather. On misty mornings, it glimmers faintly, like a secret waiting to be uncovered. On sunny afternoons, its reflections scatter across fences and windows, playful and bold. And at night, when the world grows still, the orb glows gently, like a guardian lantern in the garden, keeping watch while the wind shakes the trees. The magic lies not just in the light, but in the act of transformation itself. What was once bound to silence becomes radiant. What was broken becomes whole again in another form. In autumn especially, this carries a resonance, the reminder that change, even loss, can yield beauty. Cluster several together, hanging from branches or lining a garden path, and suddenly the space feels like a fairy festival. They shimmer as though fairies have gathered for a celebration, each orb a jewel in the crown of the season. The garden, already golden with leaves, becomes prismatic with light, a place where memory and imagination intertwine. So the shattered CDs, once forgotten, now speak in color. They remind us that even the fragments of yesterday can scatter tomorrow with rainbows. And perhaps that is the quietest kind of magic, born not of perfection, but of reinvention. In the world of autumn, where evenings stretch longer and shadows lean closer, even the smallest objects can hold mystery. Glass jars, those humble keepers of jam, pickles, or honey, become something more when touched by imagination. Under fading light, they transform into potion bottle planters, each one whispering secrets of a magical apothecary hidden within the garden. Imagine a shelf tucked into a garden corner, lined with jars of every shape and size. Some tall and narrow, others squat and rounded. Each painted in jewel-like tones, emerald, sapphire, amber, and marked with playful labels, mandrake root, dragon breath herbs, fairy dust moss. Yet, inside, there is no sorcery, only life, sprigs of thyme pushing upward, tiny marigolds blooming, moss glowing green in damp soil. Real plants dressed in fantasy's clothing. When the sun strikes the glass, the jars scatter flecks of colored light onto the soil below, like enchanted runes carved by nature itself. At dusk, with a string of fairy lights woven nearby, they glow as if lit from within, as though the garden itself is concocting potions in preparation for the colder months. There is something deeply comforting about these planters. They remind us of stories we once read, Hogwarts potion class, hobbits drying herbs in tiny kitchens, fairies whispering in twilight. Yet they ground us too, in the scent of basil, the touch of damp earth, the sight of a bee resting on a bloom. It is magic made practical, wonder woven into everyday care. For children, they are potions waiting to be brewed. For adults, they are a soft reminder that even recycling can carry imagination, that jars destined for the bin can instead become talismans of creativity. And for the garden, they are jewels, each bottle a sparkling bead in autumn's necklace of gold and russet. Clustered along a fence, scattered by a pathway, or grouped in baskets, these potion planters invite curiosity. Visitors lean closer, read the labels, smile, and breathe deeper. They may chuckle at the whimsy, but they linger for the calm. And perhaps that is their true spell, not to turn lead into gold or water into wine, but to make trash into treasure, to make the ordinary into something that feels extraordinary beneath the autumn sky. Autumn has always been the season of mystery, the air sharp with the promise of change, the nights stretching longer as if to make room for old tales. And what better symbol of that enchantment than a cauldron, not forged in iron, but reborn from a rusty pan left forgotten in a kitchen corner. The pan, scratched and worn, with handles bent from years of use, no longer cooks stews or sauces. Instead, it finds new life as a vessel of imagination. With a coat of paint or the soft cover of moss, it becomes a miniature cauldron, the kind you might imagine a witch or fairy leaving by the garden gate. Planted with marigolds, ivy, or thyme, it overflows with color, a bubbling brew of life instead of potion. Placed along a pathway, the cauldron feels like a secret offering, an object both playful and solemn. Children laugh, calling it a witch's pot. Adults pause, amused yet charmed, reminded of stories where cauldrons brewed not just spells but transformations. In the glow of fairy lights or the flicker of a nearby lantern, the rusty metal gleams, its imperfections turned into character, its age into authenticity. The beauty lies in the contrast. What was once discarded, overlooked, becomes the centerpiece of a whimsical corner. The garden, in turn, absorbs it seamlessly, marigolds bright against its dark rim, ivy softening its edges, autumn leaves gathering around it like scattered pages of an old spellbook. The air smells of earth and smoke, and suddenly the cauldron seems more than decoration. It feels alive, as though it might begin to simmer with hidden magic at any moment. This transformation is not only about upcycling, it is about storytelling. The rusty pan becomes a character in the garden's narrative, a reminder that no object is too humble to carry wonder. In autumn especially, with its harvest moons and flickering candles, the mini cauldrons belong as naturally as pumpkins or scarecrows. And so, beneath the fading sun and rising mist, the garden keeps its secrets. The cauldrons wait quietly, not to cook, not to boil, but to remind us, magic can be found in what we choose to see differently. A rusty pan, with a little imagination, can hold an entire world of enchantment. Every garden deserves a throne, not for kings or queens, but for the fairies who slip between shadows and petals when no one is looking. From a broken chair, its back cracked, its legs uneven, rises such a throne, a seat of wonder fashioned from what was once only destined for the trash heap. The story begins with abandonment. An old chair, worn from years of use, perhaps missing a slat, perhaps wobbling at its joints, is set aside. Yet in autumn, when imagination runs thick with golden light and falling leaves, the chair transforms. Stripped down and reshaped, it becomes a fairy throne, draped in moss for cushions, its frame wound with ivy, marigolds tucked into its crevices like jewels. Placed in a garden corner, the throne seems to command attention. Children run to it first, whispering about fairy queens who might arrive at night to hold court beneath the stars. Adults chuckle, but even they pause, drawn in by the quiet charm, as though the throne might indeed be waiting for someone small and magical to take their seat. In the glow of lanterns or the shimmer of morning dew, the chair no longer feels broken, it feels royal. The power of this creation lies in its story. To see a broken chair and envision not loss, but majesty, is itself a spell. Recycling becomes more than function, it becomes enchantment. The throne is whimsical but grounding, a symbol that beauty doesn't require perfection, only imagination. Autumn deepens this effect. Fallen leaves gather at its base like a golden carpet, the crisp air sharpens its silhouette, and the garden seems to lean toward it, as though acknowledging its new ruler. Pumpkins cluster nearby like loyal guards, and the hum of crickets becomes its evening song. At night, if strung with fairy lights, the throne glows faintly, casting gentle shadows across the soil. In those moments, one could believe the fairies truly come. And perhaps they do, unseen, blessing the garden with wonder. So the broken chair sits not in disgrace, but in honor, its story rewritten. A throne not for power, but for play, not for grandeur, but for magic. It reminds us that even in brokenness, there can be beauty, and in every discarded object, there is a chance to imagine anew. In every fairy tale, there are mushrooms, tiny umbrellas for woodland creatures, glowing markers of hidden villages. In the garden, these symbols of wonder return in an unexpected form, mushroom towers from yogurt cups. What was once a vessel for breakfast or snacks becomes, with imagination, a beacon of enchantment. Each yogurt cup, lightweight and ordinary, is stacked and painted into stems. The tops become caps, transformed with red and white polka dots or glowing with pastel hues. Some carry the charm of wild toadstools, others rise tall like magical towers. Nestled at the base of marigolds or scattered among ivy, they look as if they've sprouted overnight, part of the natural order yet touched with whimsy. Children squeal with delight, running from one to another, certain that fairies could be hiding beneath the caps. Adults linger, smiling at the cheerful sight, reminded of illustrations in storybooks they once read. The mushrooms may be made of plastic, but under autumn's golden light, they feel as real as any forest toadstool. Their strength lies in transformation. Yogurt cups, destined for the bin, become playful sculptures that blend joy with sustainability. They brighten dull garden corners, turning overlooked patches into fairy groves. When clustered, they create the sense of a hidden village. When placed singly, they surprise the eye like little jewels scattered across the soil. In autumn, the mushrooms feel especially fitting. The earth is damp, leaves carpet the ground, and twilight lingers, conditions that always hint at secrets below the surface. The mushroom towers echo that mystery, glowing softly if strung with fairy lights, reflecting dew at dawn, standing proud as the garden rests. Perhaps fairies really do come to perch upon them when no one is watching. Perhaps they are only imagination's trick. Either way, the effect is the same: joy, wonder, and a pause to look more closely at the ordinary. What once was trash becomes a doorway to stories. A yogurt cup becomes a mushroom becomes a tower, and the garden becomes a realm where magic feels near. And in that transformation, we find again what autumn always teaches: that change can be beautiful, playful, and full of surprises. Autumn is the season when leaves write poetry in the air, drifting down in gold, amber, and crimson. Yet what happens when the trees stand bare, and you wish to keep that beauty alive a little longer? That is when the autumn leaf garlands from old curtains make their quiet entrance, stitching memory and imagination together. Old curtains, once heavy with dust and years of service, are reborn as delicate leaves. Strips are cut, shaped into maple, oak, or chestnut silhouettes, and painted in the warm tones of fall. Some carry patterns from their former lives: floral prints, faded stripes, now becoming veins and textures of leaves. Strung together, they form garlands that sway gently in the breeze, as though the wind itself had stitched them across the garden. Hung on fences, pergolas, or above pathways, the garlands ripple like rivers of firelight. By day, they glow against the muted sky, a celebration of color when the real leaves have all but fallen. By night, entwined with fairy lights, they shimmer softly, transforming the garden into a festival of warmth and whimsy. There is a tenderness in this creation. It speaks of resourcefulness, taking fabric meant to be discarded and giving it a new stage. It also speaks of longing, the desire to hold on to autumn's fleeting beauty, to stretch its golden days a little further. In every swaying strip, there is nostalgia, but also joy. Children race beneath the garlands, pretending to walk under enchanted canopies. Adults pause at their glow, reminded of celebrations past, of bonfires and gatherings where laughter lingered in the crisp air. The garlands don't just decorate, they connect. They weave stories of transformation, just as autumn itself transforms the world. The garden, dressed in these fabric leaves, feels like a fairy tale. Pumpkins glow beneath them, chrysanthemums nod at their edges, and the air hums with the quiet magic of things remade. No one looking at them would guess they began as old curtains. Instead, they stand as proof that beauty can be born from the ordinary, that even scraps of fabric can flutter with wonder. And so the garlands hang, swaying softly, whispering with each gust of wind. They remind us that seasons change, but imagination can preserve their light long after the last leaf has fallen. There is an ancient belief that owls are guardians of the night, watchers of secrets, and keepers of wisdom. In the soft chill of autumn, this myth finds a playful echo in the garden, where discarded detergent jugs transform into owl watchtowers, standing sentinel among flowers and falling leaves. The jugs, once harsh and practical, are reshaped into whimsical forms. A pair of large circles cut into the plastic become enormous watchful eyes. Beaks are painted, wings hinted with strokes of amber, brown, or russet, echoing the colors of autumn itself. Perched on posts or tucked into garden corners, they look both comical and wise, as if truly aware of all that passes in their realm. By day, the owls are cheerful guardians, their round faces peeking from ivy and marigolds, their bright colors catching the low autumn sun. By night, with fairy lights glowing inside, they shift into lanterns, watchtowers glowing gently in the darkness. They keep company with crickets, guide footsteps along garden paths, and suggest that the world is always being watched over by something quiet and kind. Children often laugh at them, giving them names, treating them like protectors of secret fairy kingdoms. Adults pause, charmed by how such an ordinary jug could be reshaped into something so full of character. In this transformation, the owl towers carry both humor and reverence. They remind us that guardians don't have to be grand, they can be made from what we discard, glowing with imagination. Autumn deepens their presence. Scattered leaves swirl at their bases, and their eyes gleam like polished amber in the lantern light. Set among pumpkins and chrysanthemums, they feel entirely at home, as though they had always belonged to the season. But beyond their charm, the owls whisper a quiet truth: protection is often found in the overlooked, and magic hides in the ordinary. The detergent jug, once faceless plastic, becomes a companion, a guardian, a storyteller in its own right. And so, as the nights lengthen and the garden settles into rest, the owl watchtowers remain. They stand silent but not empty, their eyes wide, their glow steady. They keep the garden's secrets, and in their watch, the season feels less lonely, more alive, an autumn blessed with whimsical guardians. When autumn rains begin, umbrellas appear like shields against the sky. Yet some break, their ribs bent, their fabric torn, their usefulness lost. But in the garden, even this brokenness can find beauty. From their skeletal frames rises the elf gazebo, a whimsical pavilion for creatures of story and imagination. The umbrella, stripped of its fabric, becomes a delicate dome of metal ribs, its shape already echoing a roof. Add ivy trailing along its bones, scatter dried leaves across its edges, and suddenly it feels like a sacred meeting place for elves. Curtain scraps hang like drapes, softening the structure into something romantic and strange. At twilight, fairy lights woven through the ribs make it glow like a lantern, a beacon of warmth amid the cooling garden. By day, it is playful architecture, a conversation piece, a sculpture that draws the eye. Children run to sit beneath it, calling it the elves' castle or a fairy's festival tent. Adults smile, drawn to its fragile grace, surprised that such elegance could come from a broken umbrella. The ribs that once fought against storms now stand as pillars of imagination. Autumn intensifies the mood. Pumpkins cluster near its base, marigolds nod in approval, and chrysanthemums brighten the edges. Fallen leaves swirl inside its open floor like dancers gathering for a secret ritual. The air, cool and scented with soil, makes the gazebo seem even more alive, as if something might step out to welcome you in. It is more than just recycling. It is a reclaiming of wonder from what was discarded. The umbrella is no longer a tool for rain, it is a stage for fantasy, a piece of garden theater reminding us that creativity has no boundaries. Brokenness becomes possibility, and possibility becomes beauty. At night, when lanterns glow inside, the gazebo transforms the garden entirely. It becomes not a corner, but a scene, a fairground for sprites, a royal tent for elves, a place where reality feels soft around the edges. And though no one may see them, perhaps the fairies do gather there, resting beneath the ribs of a once-forgotten umbrella, whispering their thanks into the autumn wind. Clothing holds memory, the warmth of seasons, the shape of movement, the mark of time. Old jeans, frayed at the hems and patched with wear, often seem destined for the bin. But in the garden, they can rise again, not as garments, but as vessels of life. From denim fabric is born the herb pockets, whimsical planters that stitch imagination into sustainability. Picture a pair of jeans hung against a wooden fence, their pockets no longer holding coins or keys, but sprigs of rosemary, thyme, or basil. Tiny marigolds peek out like golden buttons, ivy trails from a back pocket like a secret hemline. Suddenly, the jeans seem alive, not discarded, but transformed into a playful part of the garden's fabric. Children laugh at the sight, pointing at pants-growing plants. Adults pause, amused yet impressed, charmed by the creativity hidden in something so ordinary. The garden itself seems to smile, the denim adding a splash of unexpected color against the russet tones of autumn. By day, the herb pockets are practical, fresh leaves waiting to flavor meals, flowers brightening dull corners. By evening, with fairy lights woven around the belt loops, they glow softly, turning a fence into a wall of whimsy. Even in their wear, the jeans carry dignity. The fabric, faded and soft, seems to cradle the plants tenderly. Autumn deepens the effect. The crisp air sharpens the scent of herbs, the pockets overflow like a harvest basket, and fallen leaves gather at the hems as if the jeans themselves are wading through the season. It is a scene of humor, yes, but also of comfort, proof that beauty can be found not only in polished designs, but in playful reinvention. There is a quiet symbolism in this transformation. The jeans once carried us through daily life, now, they carry growth. Once worn on journeys, now they host new beginnings. They bridge memory and renewal, practicality and magic. In a garden full of stories, the herb pockets stand out as both functional and fanciful. They invite us to touch, to smell, to laugh, to imagine. And perhaps, if fairies do walk unseen, they too might tuck themselves into a denim pocket, resting beneath a sprig of thyme, whispering thanks for a garden that turns the ordinary into the extraordinary. There are objects that hold stories even in their fractures. A broken frame, its corners splintered, its glass shattered, often seems like the end of beauty. Yet in the quiet of an autumn garden, these remnants become something extraordinary, magic mirrors that blur the line between reflection and portal. The frame, once cradling photographs or paintings, now hangs upon a fence or rests against ivy. Its glass, cracked and imperfect, no longer reflects a flawless world but a fractured one, shards of sky mixed with glimpses of marigolds, pumpkins, or lantern light. Instead of flaw, it creates mystery, as if the garden itself has hidden doorways waiting to be stepped through. Moss creeps along the edges, softening its scars. Autumn leaves catch in its corners, brightening its lines with russet and gold. At twilight, when fairy lights glow nearby, the mirror transforms entirely. Each fragment flickers like a window into another realm, perhaps a fairy grove, perhaps the Shire, perhaps a corner of Hogwarts lost to time. Children dare each other to peek closer, whispering about where it might lead. Adults pause, caught off guard by the way imperfection can feel like magic. By day, the mirror is playful, reflecting bursts of flowers and sky in unexpected angles. By night, it grows mysterious, shimmering as though alive. It doesn't simply reflect, it suggests, hinting at stories beyond the garden's edge. The brokenness no longer diminishes it, it defines it, makes it enchanting. Autumn is the perfect companion for these mirrors. The season itself is about transition, about letting go, about beauty in endings. The frames echo that truth, once discarded, now reborn, once broken, now reimagined. In their new form, they remind us that cracks are not endings but openings, that beauty does not require perfection to speak deeply. Cluster several mirrors together and the garden becomes an illusion of endlessness, reflections weaving like threads of story. Place one alone, and it feels like a gateway, silently waiting for someone brave enough to step through. Either way, they give the garden a voice of whimsy, a breath of mystery, a charm that lingers long after twilight. And so the magic mirrors stay, shimmering softly with each breeze, whispering the simplest of truths, that even what is broken can still show us another world. Every garden has paths, routes we walk without noticing, ways to cross from one corner to another. But when those paths are stitched from discarded things, they stop being ordinary. They become stories. So it is with the enchanted pathway from plastic bottle caps, a trail of color and whimsy born from the simplest of trash. Bottle caps, once tossed aside, are gathered in baskets, red, blue, green, yellow, each carrying a faint memory of its origin. When pressed into the soil or set along stepping stones, they form mosaics, swirls like autumn leaves, spirals like fairy spells, or simple rainbows brightening the earth. Suddenly, a dull stretch of dirt is alive with color, playful and bold, like confetti frozen in time. Children run barefoot along the pathway, laughing at the colors beneath their toes, declaring it the fairies' road. Adults smile, surprised by the unexpected beauty of something so small. With each cap, the path becomes a tapestry of imagination, a reminder that magic need not come from rare things, it can arrive from the ordinary, rearranged with care. By day, the caps catch sunlight, gleaming like jewels scattered across the ground. By evening, with fairy lights tracing the edges, the path glows as though it were leading deeper into a hidden story. It invites not just walking but wandering, encouraging visitors to slow down, to notice, to let curiosity linger. Autumn sharpens its beauty. Fallen leaves drift across the mosaic, blending with the colors until it feels like a living artwork, half made by humans, half by the season itself. Pumpkins line its sides, chrysanthemums nod approval, and the garden takes on a festival air, joyful, whimsical, unafraid of imperfection. There is symbolism here too. A cap that once sealed a bottle now seals a memory into the earth. Trash becomes a bridge, a guide, a promise that even the smallest pieces can matter when arranged with intention. Walking the enchanted pathway is more than crossing ground. It is stepping into a new way of seeing. It reminds us that beauty is not purchased but made, not found in perfection but discovered in reinvention. And as twilight falls, the path glimmers softly, as though fairies themselves had laid it down, leading us gently through autumn's golden embrace.